Do you ever get in the mood to watch a film that you hope will really challenge you? If so, I would like to recommend a director to you. It's a Russian director, Andrei Tarkovsky. And I was kind of surprised to learn that I have, I think, all his films except one of them. And I'm going to show you these briefly. And I'm going to put them into a couple different categories. Category one being films of his that I was able to get into on one viewing. They were, I wouldn't call them accessible, but they worked for me right off the bat, and I was able to appreciate them. And that is Andrei Rublev, which was a pretty controversial one at the time. I think the Russian government tried to suppress it. And then another one that I really enjoyed was Stalker, which some people do have trouble with, but which I got into and really liked. And like with all of his films, it's not everything is spelled out in here, so you have to kind of be willing to go along for the ride. And the story goes that where he shot this film was it was contaminated, the area, and it's possible what led to his death of lung cancer in his mid-50s. Now the next category would be some films of his that I saw that I really need to watch again. I only saw once, and I didn't quite grasp them. And that would be Solaris, another science fiction film. I actually read the novel in college. Didn't quite grasp it then either. But I do want to revisit this one at some point. Again, a science fiction themed film. And this was supposed to be Tarkovsky's answer to Kubrick's 2001: A Space Odyssey, one of my top 10 favorites. And he did not like Kubrick's film. And apparently he didn't like the final version of this either. And then another one that I really had the most difficulty with was Mirror. And this is really an impressionistic film. I would call it very arty, and I'm not sure what was going on in this film. And then finally, his last film is The Sacrifice, which I haven't even seen yet. But the funny thing is, I never saw his very first feature film, and what category would that one fall into for me? Well, that's the topic for today's episode. This is the Kazdoy Closet. I'm Kazdoy, and that's my closet full of all the stuff that I love. And today, a Russian child deals with the horrors of World War II. Let's check it out. Today's film is Ivan's Childhood from 1962, 95 minutes long, beautiful black and white, and I mean gorgeous black and white. And it's in Russian with English subtitles. It's about a boy in Russia named Ivan who serves as a scout for the Russian army during World War II. It won the top prize at the Venice Film Festival that year. As I mentioned before, this is directed by Andrei Tarkovsky, one of the most famous Soviet film directors. He is known for using lots of poetic imagery, drawing from childhood memories of his own, a certain dream logic which you as the viewer either latch onto and roll with or you don't. There are certain directors that work for me that way. David Lynch comes to mind, where I just can get into his dream logic and go for the ride and really enjoy it. He is basically a visionary director. Now that word is sometimes used overused, I think. Like if they say, from visionary director James Cameron. Well, to me, visionary means you have a unique perspective on things that carries throughout the work, that is singular, very personal only to you. You are in the hands of this person who is conveying his own personal vision throughout the entire film. David Cronenberg comes to mind for me. Kubrick as well, I believe. And then as far as story-wise goes, you're going to have to work to fill in the gaps. Not everything's going to be explained to you. Some things might be just left wide open. And if you want to do the work, then you will appreciate it even more. Now, when we first meet Ivan, our main character in this film, it's the first of 4 dream sequences interspersed throughout the film. And the dream sequences involve either fantasies, childhood fantasies of his, idyllic fantasies, or what it was like before the war started. And this is not a spoiler because it's around the back of the disc. His entire family was wiped out in the war. So he has these very nostalgic, wonderful memories of him being a child, and he looks a lot different in these fantasy sequences or these dream sequences. And it starts with one of those, him and his mother, and then bang, we're in the war now. And all those lush trees that he was roaming around with his mother and playing and everything, now it's nighttime, the trees are all bare, everything's desolate and gloomy. And this is his life now. And he meets these soldiers and he starts making demands of these soldiers, this 12-year-old kid. And the soldier's like, who is this kid and why is he bossing us around? We're thinking the same thing as the viewer. Well, it turns out he's very valuable because he is so small, he can get into places that grown men can't and then report back on where the enemy is. So he's very valuable. He physically, he's pretty scrawny. He's looking pretty haunted. Let me show you a picture of him from the booklet here. And obviously he's haunted by everything that he's been through. There's Ivan. Now in the dream sequences, he looks a lot different, but that's how he looks during the war. And he's kind of scarred up. His back is all scarred up at one point. We don't know why. We just know that he's been through an awful lot of terrible things. A couple of times, some of the soldiers say, this kid should not be here. He should be in a military school or he should be in a children's home. Well, apparently Ivan was put in a children's home and he just escaped and he ran away because he has a couple of things on his mind. The main thing is vengeance. He wants vengeance for what happened to his family. And the other thing is he wants to be useful. And he says if he's not going to be with them, helping them out, he's useless and he doesn't want to be useless. Like all of Tarkovsky's films, Ivan's childhood is visually stunning from the first frame to the last frame. It's a very expressionistic, unusual angles and lighting choices and shot compositions throughout the whole thing, and very atmospheric. He also uses visual motifs throughout the film. Lots of religious imagery of crosses and paintings, religious paintings. These bare birch trees that show up constantly through the film. And the personal memories of Tarkovsky. Now, we don't know what his personal memories are, but if you read about him a little bit, you'll find out these are memories from his childhood that he's putting into his films. Overall, you get the feeling that you are in the hands of a master filmmaker. You're in the hands of a person who has a very specific vision that no other filmmaker can have. And that's always kind of thrilling, I think, to go for this ride and to trust him to take you on this ride. So, I watched this film twice. I usually don't do that for this channel, but I did, and I'll tell you why. The first time I watched it, I thought, how am I going to talk about Tarkovsky? I mean, there's so much there. I'm not an expert on him, and it was intimidating. So I kind of put it aside, thought about it, and watched it again. Now, the first time I watched it, I was so blown away by the visuals that some of the plot and some of the dialogue escaped me. So the second time I watched it, the visuals were there already. I knew it was going to be visually impressive, and I could get into the dialogue and the backstory of Ivan more and what was actually happening. So it was really valuable to watch it a second time, and I've thought about it a lot since. Always a good sign. My rating for this one, 5 apples out of 5. Why apples, you ask? There is one of the dream sequences where Ivan is on a cart and it's filled with apples, and the apples fall over the road, and these horses come along and start eating the apples. Again, a personal memory from Tarkovsky when he was a child that he put inside here, and it just all works together beautifully. So this is what's on this disc? This is a Criterion disc, and the sale is still going on. This is November 21st, so you can still grab it if you want to. And it looks great. It sounds great. And it comes with this booklet that I kind of showed you before. which is pretty good. I don't know, it's maybe about 30 pages, this booklet here. And it has a few photos, and then it has an essay from a journalist who studied Tarkovsky, and then it has some piece of writing by Tarkovsky himself, and it also has a half-hour interview with a woman who wrote a book about Tarkovsky. It has a series of short interviews with the cinematographer, who does an amazing job, and a series of short interviews with the actor, now much older man, who played Ivan in the film. Where can you see Ivan's childhood? Well, if you have the Criterion channel, it's streaming on there right now. You can also rent it on Amazon Prime. You can try your local library. So feel free to leave a comment or suggestion down here. Maybe a filmmaker you find particularly challenging, or maybe you're a Tarkovsky fan and you have your own personal favorite. Leave a thumbs up. Don't leave a thumbs down. Subscribe would be great. Share this with your friends and neighbors. Otherwise, thanks so much for watching. Hope you like this one. See you next time.